Hello, I'm Robert, voluntary fact checker and helping if you're scared of many things. And this, I'm just going to explain a simple point here, which is that to give you an idea of how very small the war actually is in Ukraine. And that it does not in any way threaten Putin. He's not cornered. He just, for some reason that is not very well understood, there are various ideas about why he does it. But for some reason, he's continuing a very, very slow war that achieves very, very little. There can be few wars that there have ever been that have achieved so little at such high cost to the invader. So let's look at this. So first of all, this shows how big the Russian, it's almost an empire, even though the Russian Federation is, even with the loss of the Soviet Union extra states that ended up being part of Europe, but Russia still ended up being by far the largest country in the world. And that's 7,900 kilometers from one side to the other. It's a little bit fast if you go via the poles because it's wrapped around the pole. But if you go follow the natural route that Russians would travel by driving, then that's how big it is. And then if you look at what Putin has managed to add to Russia in Donbas, then he had these big advances in the spring of 2022. Then the Ukrainians won a huge half of it back just very quickly, just within a few weeks. And then it won an awful lot back again in the fall of 2022. And after that, neither side has been able to make much difference to the front line. So that's from November 11th, 2022. Since then, all the changes have been minute. And the Russia, if you look at its fastest advance over the last 1,000 days, the furthest it's travelled in 1,000 days is 50 kilometers in Donbas. And that works out at 50 meters a day, 1,000 days, 50 kilometers, that's 50 meters a day. And a garden snail travels about 24 meters a day. So they're travelling about roughly twice the speed of a garden snail. That's how fast Russia is going. And then if you look at it, if you imagine that Putin had a 2-meter wide map of Russia on a wall somewhere, and it's quite plausible that he does. He doesn't use the internet, he doesn't use computers, mobile devices. Then, so he works very much with physical things. So he probably has a 2-meter wide map somewhere on one of his walls where he works out all the things to do with planning and so on. Or it could be a table or whatever, 2-meter wide table. And if he had all of Russia in that table, then he would need to use a magnifying glass to look at the various things that he runs as being new advances. Pretty much most days or weeks at least, there's a big statement in Donbas saying they've won this extra street or this extra village or this extra field somewhere in Donbas, and the entire advance would just be just over 1 centimeter in that entire big map of the furthest they've advanced in Donbas. So I hope that gives you an idea of just how little that Russia is actually fighting over. And they're losing so many soldiers, and it's Putin who has decided to do this. And Putin can decide to stop. And he could decide to stop tomorrow. And if he did, there's very little, the other people in Russia then, vast distance from the war, and most of them just think of it as being a special operation. They don't think of it as being a war even. So that's the important thing to realise. So it's quite easy for him to stop it, because most of Russians aren't even really aware that it is a war. It's just a special operation, and at some point Putin will decide it's over. And then when he decides it's over, as long as Putin says that he's won, which he would do, then they're happy and they say, oh, okay, our strong leader has done what he set out to do. And that's it. It'd be very easy for him to stop it. Then I also want to explain the second point. So I'll explain that in a separate video. So I just want to keep the video stopped. So that's just 5 minutes to to explain that first point. Yes, I think that'll do fine. Right. So check the video description for the link to the blog post and this graphic, and to the second graphic in the second video.